Good morning, Bucs fans, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners, and welcome to the Pewter Pregame Show. This is the place you want to be every game day. Before kickoff at 9 o'clock each game day, the Pewter Report staff gets you prepared for hopefully another Buccaneer win. They need a bounce-back win after the 24-9 loss up in Detroit. Tampa Bay has a chance to head into the bye week 6-2, a very much-needed bye week given the injuries for this team. I am your host, Scott Reynolds from Pewter Report, and alongside me today, I am proud to do the show with Josh Capo. It's been a while since we've done a show together, brother.
It has. A new job in my other life, and it prevents me from doing many of these podcasts, but really exciting to get back on here with you, Scott, and talk about this matchup.
Yeah, this is a big game, and I kind of want to set the table for this by saying that, we didn't see the maturity I was hoping to see from this Bucs team. They didn't really handle the expectations of being the hunted very well on Monday Night Football. Detroit just not ready to hand over NFC supremacy just yet, not on their turf, on their terms. And I still think the Lions right now probably the class of the NFC. They were a 15-2 team last year that just, when healthy, they're as good as anybody. And they just kind of ran out of bodies last year, and the Washington Commanders exposed them at their own place in the playoffs after securing home field advantage. But Josh, the Bucs have a chance to show a different kind of maturity because good teams, they might lose back-to-back games. They might even go on a 4-game losing streak like the Buccaneers have in each of the last 2 seasons. But great teams, they don't lose back-to-back games. They bounce back, and we saw that up in Detroit last Monday night when the Lions were coming off a spanking by the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead on Sunday Night Football. The Lions came in pissed off, and they took out their frustrations on the Buccaneers. Josh, can the Buccaneers take on that similar type of maturity and take out their frustrations out on the Saints in the Bayou today?
Well, they certainly can. And I love the point that you made, Scott, because I saw somewhere the Lions haven't lost back-to-back games since they became good. Yeah. And I think that goes to that maturity that you're talking about of a team and so many parallels between the Bucs and Lions because last year the Lions 15-2, despite being decimated on the defensive side of the ball with injuries, the Bucs dealing with their own injuries, and they certainly are capable of being that really great team and preventing this 1-game loss from becoming a slide going into the bye week. But they shouldn't overlook the Saints for a myriad of reasons. Number one, divisional games are usually not routes, although the last time the Bucs went into New Orleans, it kind of became a route in the second half. And yes, the Saints are 1-6, but I don't know about you, Scott, but I just don't see any bad vibes coming out of New Orleans because there are some positives coming from that organization. Some of their young players are starting to play well. And while the expectations are low, they seem to consistently exceed them. And they've played competitive ball in almost every single one of their games this year. So if the Bucs are besought by a couple of bad plays or just don't come out really on fire, they have the potential to be down before they even know it in enemy territory.
And, I call the Saints a sticky team because they find a way to stick around. They've had maybe 2 blowout losses this year, but it wasn't like a 40-3 drubbing or anything like that. But they've managed to stick around. I believe they were down, I want to say 14-0 against the Giants in New Orleans, and they came back to beat the Giants for their only win. But even that Bears game last week, you look at the stats, it's kind of ugly. A couple of interceptions from Spencer Rattler. He didn't play well. The Saints run defense, which has given up about 130 yards per game on the ground. They got lit up for 222 yards on the ground in Chicago. But they only lost by, I believe, 8 points. So they're kind of a sticky, feisty team that will be that thorn in your side that you have a hard time getting out, and it just kind of bugs you for 4 quarters.
Yep, absolutely. And that, I think, kind of takes us to one of the things that I'll be interested to see is which Spencer Rattler shows up. You had mentioned in that game, he did not play well. Most of this season he has. Yeah. And to be honest, here in week 8, I didn't think the Bucs would be seeing Spencer Rattler. The Saints invested a 2nd-round pick in, and I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head.
The Louisville quarterback.
Yeah.
Chuck, right? Tyler Chuck?
Tyler Shough. They invested a second-round pick, then guaranteed his entire contract.
Yeah.
And Rattler just beat him out in training camp and then came out. And Rattler has done enough that you, at least if you're in the Saints organization, have to have the conversation. Do we build around this kid?
Yeah.
Because he has taken a definite jump from year 1 to year 2. And there have been some games where he's been downright good. He's pushed the ball downfield.
Yeah.
Got some weapons. And that's really the thing that the Bucs are going to have to. This will be a test on their secondary because Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave, when healthy, those are some really good weapons for Rattler to use. And then, of course, they've always got Alvin Kamara underneath to provide him with some outlets. So this is not a game that the Bucs can again rest on their laurels. They have to be careful because the Saints can hit some explosives.
Yeah, and the other guy that has been, I'll stick with this phrase, a thorn in the Bucs side has been Juwan Johnson, their tight end. He's had some big games against the Buccaneers and has been problematic. And it's going to be really interesting to see how Todd Bowles covers him. I suspect Tyke Smith's going to be involved. I'm sure we'll probably see Jacob Parrish in the nickel and the slot have a couple of reps there. Levante David has had his opportunities to cover Juwan Johnson in the past. So it's not going to be just one guy per se, but he has been a player that he doesn't grab the headlines. He doesn't have the longevity in New Orleans that Alvin Kamara does. He doesn't have the speed, certainly, of a Chris Olave or a Rashid Shaheed. But when you're a young quarterback, you look for that tight end to be your safety blanket. And he's been a pretty reliable target for whoever's playing quarterback for the Saints. Yeah,
absolutely. I remember you and I having a conversation, was it last year, maybe even the year before that, and us having like a thorough, like, is he possibly better than the kid out of Florida who plays for Atlanta, who was Kyle Pitts, as one of the better tight ends in the NFC South, or possibly even the best tight end in the NFC South.
Yeah.
And I think we came to, he might be like, at least in terms of consistency, which when you look at the tight end position, most quarterbacks, that's what they want out of it. It's just somebody I can consistently find. He can get me out of jams when the concept of the play doesn't really work. We can still keep the offense moving forward. And Johnson has been a big volume target guy against the Bucs over their last few meetings.
Yeah. For sure. Well, here's the question everybody wants to know. Is Vita Vea playing, as Christopher Cole says? Let's get into the injury report. And from what I understand, the team is hopeful that Vita Vea plays today. It might be a game time decision. They might go out there and see how Vita Vea's foot is feeling in cleats out there on the turf at the Caesars Superdome today, a place where the Buccaneers actually trailed last year. It was a wild game. If you remember, Antoine Winfield Jr. had a scoop and score in his first game back after missing several games. The Buccaneers jumped out to a big first quarter lead. And then all of a sudden, Baker Mayfield threw some interceptions, some fluky ones. He had a 3-interception day in the Superdome, and that actually led to a lead for the Saints at halftime. But if you remember, the final score was a 50-burger for the Buccaneers. Sean Tucker scored that last touchdown to get Tampa Bay over 50 points, and they completely shut out the Saints in the second half. Tyke Smith, Zion McCollum had interceptions, and they really turned up the heat on Spencer Rattler, who did not have a good day. Vita Vea played a role in that, getting to Spencer Rattler for a sack, just blowing up things in the interior, as he is known to do. So let's talk about the injury report today, and it is brought to you by Jorgensen Law PA. Visit jorgensenlawoffice.com or give them a call at 727-347-7733. The Jorgensen brothers, huge Tampa Bay fans, huge Pewter Report fans as well. So please, if you're in need of an attorney for personal injury, workers' comp, Social Security, they're the people to call. Their offices in St. Petersburg. Great group of guys over there. And give them your business, jorgensenlawoffice.com. They are the sponsors of our Pewter Report injury reports. And we know the first 4 guys are out, right? Josh, Chris, Godwin, still out with that fibula. Luke Haggard practiced a little bit this week, still not ready to go with the shoulder. We expect Mike Jordan to fill in again at right guard. He was signed from the practice squad to the active roster this week. Bucky Irving, we've been talking about this for weeks, was going to be out through the bye week, and that's playing out to be the case with the foot and shoulder. Hassan Reddick injured his ankle. We have it as a foot, but an ankle and a knee, and he is out So Vita Vea with the foot injury is questionable. And again, the team is hopeful that he can play, because if he does play, he's got a chance to go up against a backup center and Luke Fortner as their best offensive lineman. Eric McCoy, Josh, is out. Their Pro Bowler's out for the season with an injury. He was injured last week's game, so he's on IR. So a big opportunity for Vita Vea if he can play today.
Yeah, and I think that between Fortner and Cesar Ruiz, that's a matchup that you want Vita playing 10 times out of 10.
Yes.
I know that Ruiz has been in New Orleans for quite a while. I just don't think he's all that great, despite the contracts that he's been able to sign. And Fortner, I don't think, has a great anchor, which is the play is obviously to Vita's strength. So I think that this can be a huge game for Vita. I'm also very interested to see how Elijah Roberts plays against this interior, because you can add Trevor Penning in there, and Penning is a big guy and he can move forward and he can certainly drive some guys with some pancake blocks,
but sideways.
Not sideways. And Roberts, that's one of his big strengths is he hits you with that really strong club, and he's got this great way of kind of moving at two different speeds between his hands and what he's doing up top, and then his lower half getting lateral and finding ways around guys. And I think that Roberts against Penning is going to be very interesting. And if you compare him with Vita, the Bucs could create all sorts of havoc up the middle.
I agree.
And get into Spencer Rattler's face. And that's going to be necessary with the lack of Hassan Reddick this week.
For sure. And a couple more injury notes. Don't want to alarm anybody, because Baker Mayfield is playing in this game. He's not even listed as questionable or anything, and I have him in there as in. But it's noteworthy that he was limited in practice on Wednesday, had a full participation on Thursday, then was limited on Friday. And the reason I say that is it's not just the knee that kind of concerns me, because we've seen kind of the hitch in Mayfield's giddy up for a couple of weeks now, Josh, really since, a couple of weeks ago when he was getting up in the face of that defender in Houston, right? I think that's where that injury kind of occurred.
Yep.
But the oblique injury, that's different for a quarterback because of the torque, and you're twisting your body to throw the ball. So that's something to keep an eye on today. How accurate is Baker Mayfield? We saw him be pretty inaccurate last week compared to what he's capable of playing. And I'll have you comment on that in a second, but we also want to note that Josh Williams, the LSU running back, has a chance to play back in the Bayou. He has been cleared from his concussion. But Josh, any concern with Baker Mayfield? Again, I've got a little bit of a concern. He's a tough customer, right? But will that oblique injury affect his ability to throw the ball deep? Will it affect his accuracy? We just don't know until that one particular torque, and that can get you a little bit.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of it may have had a bigger impact on him last week than anybody really foresaw. And I also think that this could affect the other part of his game that's been pretty high level this year, which is his scrambling, his ability to kind of create on the second reaction if the design isn't there, or if the pressure gets to him a little bit more quickly. Because if you watch how Baker, gets out of those situations, there's a lot of body torque in his movements. And with a limited oblique, that may stiffen him up a little bit and make him a little less elusive in the pocket. So I think that is something absolutely to monitor. Can he get his mechanics back enough to lower some of his throws, because a lot of the times he was missing high, which could be because of that oblique and just the way that it's allowing that torque to happen. And then also, does it limit his ability to scramble if, say, the right side of the line gets dented in? Yeah,
for sure. It's going to be a very interesting game in New Orleans. Buccaneers, you would think, might be favored by a lot because they have the better roster. They've got the better record, et cetera. The Saints have only won one game, but I think Vegas has shown a little bit of confidence that New Orleans is going to keep this close. Tampa Bay only favored by 3.5. Typically, the home team in an even game might get favored by 3, but Tampa Bay here only favored by 3.5, presented by Splash Sports. Your thoughts on that, Josh?
Yeah, I think this also speaks to the biggest consistent issue for Tampa Bay all year, which is the health, right? Vita Vea being questionable, not knowing if he's going to go today. I know the team is hopeful, but between that, Kalijah Cansey, this is finally the first time where I think the secondary is really in good shape, but you still have all the injuries on the offensive side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Luke is out, Cody Mack out for the season. The Bucs are still down. They're technically 3 of their top 4 receivers.
Right.
And I think Vegas is saying, well, the Saints are pretty healthy outside of losing their center. This is basically who they thought they were going to have to start the season. So eventually backups start being about as good as the starters for bad teams. Right. And I think that line ends up showing that the talent on the rosters are maybe a little bit more comparable than you might think when you include or allow for the injuries that the Bucs are still dealing with, and hope to get past a few of them next week on the bye.
We should note there were a couple of practice squad elevations yesterday. No surprise. One of them was kind of a surprise, but this guy wasn't. As Bat W says, I want to see what Mo Camara has. Mo Camara featured him a couple weeks ago in an SR's Fab 5 column as in my Next Man Up series, and he is the next man up because they need another edge rusher with Hassan Reddick being down this week. Mo Camara is a player that, Josh, you and I both liked coming out of Colorado State in the 2024 draft. He ended up being a day 3 pick by the Dolphins. And, you and I were both high on David Walker, this year's 4th-round pick out of Central Arkansas, that unfortunately a week into camp went on injured reserve with the torn ACL. He's out for the year. The Bucs will essentially get a bonus draft pick next year when he finally takes the field. But Mo Camara kind of has the same body build, same kind of playing style, a little bit of a Tasmanian devil style. It didn't work out in Miami. A little bit of a logjam there behind Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, of course. But, sometimes these players just need a change of scenery. And sometimes that can happen to an established guy like a Baker Mayfield who needs a change of scenery. Sometimes it's a guy who's just starting out his career in the wrong place. And maybe Mo Camara can bring some juice to this pass rush today because Anthony Nelson's going to be starting in place of Hassan Reddick opposite Yaya Diaby. And I do not have a lot of confidence in Chris Braswell or Marquise Watts. And maybe this kid flashes a little bit. What are your thoughts, Josh?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this one up, Scott, because there's 2 different points I want to make about this particular one. A, I think it goes to the organizational foresight difference between a Tampa Bay and a Miami. You mentioned all the guys that Mo Camara was set to be behind, and they went out and signed a absolutely cooked Matthew Judon, who has now been a healthy scratch for them, right? Yeah. So they give up on this kid.
Apparently they didn't watch the Falcons film from last year. Right?
I know. So they give up on this kid and let him go for 3 guys who legitimately are on the trade block and may get moved by week 10. Yeah. And now they don't have the opportunity to see what Kamara has. The other thing, looked at my draft evaluation board from 2024, and Mo Camara was my edge 11. Mm-hmm. And do you know who I had as edge 10?
No.
Chris Braswell.
Chris Braswell. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So for me, the 2 of them, I saw them very close in terms of their ability to impact the game. Braswell has obviously been fairly disappointing since coming into the league last year, given his draft status. Yeah. He was a 2nd-round pick for the Bucs. Kamara, there's all upside, no downside for the Bucs as he's on their practice squad. I do want to see what he can do because while he doesn't have your natural bend, he plays, I think the way I described him, kind of like a Tasmanian devil. Yeah. He's going to bring as much juice as his body can muster. Yeah. And then he has this way of flipping his hips at the top of the arc. It's not true bend, but it's just kind of like a trigger where he all of a sudden just turns almost like a hinge and then tries to get into the pocket that way. So I'm interested to see what he might be able to do. I'm not super high on the Saints tackle duo of Calvin Banks and Fuaga. I think he's better on his natural side, the right side now, and I think there's been some positives there. I just was never a big Fuaga guy, and I think that Kamara might have a chance to create a couple pressures in some limited looks today. Yep. And in general, I'm still high on the Bucs edge rushers, especially Yaya Diaby. Yep. So Kamara, I'm hopeful that they are going to give him 10 to 12 snaps and see what he might be able to bring to the matchup.
Yeah, the other guy that was a practice squad elevation Connor Bazelak.
Yeah.
It's a little odd that you have your practice squad third string quarterback elevated, but as we found out this week, Teddy Bridgewater was listed on the injury report with teeth. So I don't know if it was dental work, if he had a root canal done, if he had wisdom teeth pulled out, if he had a tooth knocked out, I don't know, but he missed some practice this week. It's been sickness. Bridgewater had an elbow. It's just uncommon for your backup quarterback to be on the injury report as often as he has, given the fact that he hasn't gotten hit or hasn't played in a game. But Teddy Bridgewater has had a little bit of a calamity from week to week on this injury report. He is expected to play. But again, given the fact that you've got Teddy Bridgewater, who's on the injury report with teeth, and then Baker Mayfield with a knee and an oblique. And again, not trying to fearmonger or whatever, but it's worth noting that he went from a limited participant in practice on Wednesday to a full participant. I'm talking about Baker Mayfield on Thursday, and then limited again on Friday. He's obviously sore. He's obviously dealing with some minor injuries. Expect him to start and play, but he's only one hit away, as every quarterback is in this league, from being out. And then you got your backup in there, and then nobody wants to see Rashad White play the Wildcat quarterback, right? You'd rather have a guy that can throw the ball. So makes sense this week to have Connor Bazelak, who beat out Kyle Trask for that third string quarterback spot, elevated.
Yeah, I mean, when one of your quarterbacks is dealing with a tooth or teeth issue, it's always nice to have a bridge.
Yes. See what you did there. That's great. Especially if your name is Bridgewater, right?
Exactly. Oh my gosh, I didn't even put that one together.
Full circle. Yep.
Oh,
look at full circle, Josh. We're a team, man.
So yeah, I mean, I don't see this as too alarming. And Scott, you and I know, and we've talked about it in the past, the Bucs will from time to time do an elevation when they really look across their practice squad and say, well, there's nobody we really, really super need, but let's give a reward to some of these practice squad guys, because whoever gets elevated gets a game check, which is a significant upgrade over a practice squad check. Yeah. So Bazelak, he impressed them in training camp to the point where they really wanted to find a spot for him on the team, and they did find one on the practice squad. They liked him so much that it made it easier for them to part ways with Kyle Trask. And he, it looks like he's been doing everything that he needs to do, helping with the scout team and just learning the playbook, that they said, this is a good opportunity for us to do this and give ourselves some extra insurance. If there was a real concern with Teddy Bridgewater, what you would have seen is, in my opinion, is what Cleveland is doing this week, where Sanders has been limited and he's actually going to not be active or on their active roster for today. But then Sanders gets to be their emergency third string quarterback because he's on the active roster. He's not active for the game. And so they can use him as the emergency third string quarterback if both the first two guys get are injured. And so the Bucs have chosen not to go that route, which means Bridgewater is truly the backup. So he's capable of playing that, and he would be the first option if Baker were to go down, and Bazelak would be option number 3. So I'm not terribly concerned. I think that this is just the Bucs showing Bazelak, you're doing a good job, bud. Let's get you a game check. Yeah.
Some other interesting quarterback news around the NFC as it pertains, and why this game is important is a couple things. The Bucs need to show they can bounce back from that loss and beat the Saints. And the reason I say that and say it kind of matter-of-factly is great teams don't have the stub your toe game. And we've seen the Buccaneers each year under Todd Bowles. There's been that one loss that you're like, how did that happen? Right. And last year it was the Dallas Cowboys game. On Sunday night, this team was on a heater down the stretch and, fighting to win the division again after being below 500 after a 4-game losing streak again in the middle of the season. They go play Dallas on Sunday Night Football. Offense doesn't play particularly well. Cooper Rush played exceptionally well. You never want the backup quarterback to beat you, right? You don't want to lose on prime time, and that's what happened. And so this, to me, the Cowboys were a better team than last year than the Saints were this year. But you don't want to have that stub your toe game. Great teams don't have the stub your toe game. Great teams will lose to other good or great teams, but not bad teams. And so let's see if the Buccaneers can, can win against a New Orleans Saints team. But more importantly, look out for those Fighting Dave Canales in Carolina. They're pesky. They're 4-3, but Bryce Young got hurt last week. They're playing a home game against the Buffalo Bills. The Panthers 4-3, the Bills 4-2. And looks like Andy Dalton will get the start there, as Bryce Young is listed as doubtful for the game. The other football news in terms of quarterback play in the NFC South, the 3-3 Atlanta Falcons take on the 1-6 Miami Dolphins. Hopes are fading fast in Miami, but Kirk Cousins back in the starting lineup. We see that Michael Penix Jr. has a bone bruise in his knee, too painful to play. So Kirk Cousins will be the starter today. So a couple of backup quarterback situations in the NFC South action today. And if the Buccaneers continue to win and the Panthers and Falcons end up losing, I don't think the Falcons are going to lose today. But if the Panthers lose, it just increases their lead in the NFC South heading into the bye week, does it not?
It absolutely does. And, for all the talk about the Bucs winning a bad division over the last few years, you can see that. And I would even say the Saints are kind of bottoming out this year, but there's more than they thought they might have had. And they may have a quicker turnaround than most might think. The NFC South is an improving division in a really stacked conference. If you look at the NFC versus the AFC overall, the AFC have some of the better quarterbacks, but in terms of roster management, the NFC is where the powerhouses are. Yeah. And despite having all these great teams in all these other divisions in the NFC, like you said, the Panthers are sticking around.
I know.
They are making waves and they're above 500. And the Falcons seem to oscillate between terrible and fantastic week to week. So just a lot of variance there. So the Bucs cannot afford to really drop this one because there is a good chance that Carolina could win this week, even with Andy Dalton, who's a very capable backup.
That's right.
And now all of a sudden you're in a dogfight for the top of the division.
Yeah. And with 2 games to play against Carolina, and that was a very close game in Carolina last year, went to overtime.
Exactly. And this is so huge because it also gives the Bucs an opportunity to go 2-0 in the division and really separate, because I want to say Carolina has at least, I'm trying to think. No, I think they're perfect in the division as well.
Correct.
So you've got to keep that going because those are tiebreakers. Those are very quickly tiebreakers as division record.
Yeah. We're looking forward to this game. It's a 4:05 kickoff in the Bayou. Bucs versus Saints. Matt Matera and Daniel Morales will be on the call for Pewter Game Day. So if you're tired of listening to those biased play-by-play guys on the NFL broadcast, well, watch the game. Just turn down the volume. Turn up Matt and Daniel, who do a fantastic job of bringing the energy, the intensity, and it's all Buccaneer talk too. So it's a fantastic way to watch the game. The game's not streamed live, obviously, but you can listen or watch Matt and Daniel talk about it and bring the insight from Matt Matera's perspective from the locker room and out of practice every week. So it's a fantastic way to watch the game with other Buccaneer fans on the live chat. Great interactive broadcast. A lot of comments and questions get put up. So join us on Pewter Game Day right here on Pewter Report TV, our YouTube channel. It's also streamed live on X and Facebook, or at Pewter Report channels. So tune in today at 4:05 for Pewter Game Day. And then about 7:30-ish, we'll have the Bucs at Saints postgame podcast. Here's Sean Tucker. Remember him? Remember Sean Tucker? He had a big game last time with 2 touchdowns against the Saints. He was the NFC Offensive Player of the Week for his performance as the Bucs dropped a 50-burger on the Saints in New Orleans last year. And Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving ran wild in that game. Rashad White was out. That's why Sean Tucker was playing. But today it's Bucky Irving out, so Rashad will have a chance to taste some victory himself against the Saints. But they ran for 277 yards. Can they do it again? Probably not that much, but we'll see if this running game can get back on track. Bucs at Saints postgame podcast right here on Pewter Report TV, our YouTube channel. After the game, again, probably around 7:30. We typically wait for press conferences of Baker Mayfield and Todd Bowles to end, and then we go live. So make sure you check that out. We have a couple of comments here before we get into our keys to victory and the matchups, the key matchups for today. I want to give a couple of shout outs here to Min Centrin Bailey. Greatly appreciate you becoming a Pewter Report TV YouTube channel member. Thank you so much. We've seen our membership go through the roof here this month. Greatly appreciate everybody, including Robert Manchin, who became a Pewter Report TV YouTube channel member, so thank you very much for that. Want to give a shout out here to Chris with the $2 super chat. Hope the Saints are ready for this ass kicking. Is it going to be an ass kicking today, Josh? Is it going to be a close game? Is it going to be a blowout? Where do you think the score lies? I know what you said in your Pewter preview and predictions. All of us, too, by the way, picked the Bucs to beat the Saints. But what was your score?
I believe I had it as 24-16. I'd have to go back and double check. I think that's what it was. So I've got it as an 8-pointer. So you could technically call that a one-score game. I think that for the most part, it's going to be close throughout most of the game. I could see the Bucs kind of pulling away at the end. It's so interesting looking at recent history because, yes, the two times ago that these two teams met in New Orleans, the Bucs did end up running away, but that was in the second half, as you mentioned, 3 turnover game from Baker Mayfield. And, around the half, you're like, this offense is either humming or giving the ball away, keeping the score kind of close to begin there. But then the week 18 matchup, it was close for a good portion of the game. To the point where, Bucky Irving had to make a score late that almost cost Mike Evans his 1,000-yard
That's right.
record pursuit. And thankfully, Todd Bowles allowed them to get that for Mike. But, right up until, what was it, the last 2.5 minutes of the game, that result was not, like some foregone conclusion. So I think this is going to be a little bit closer than Bucs fans would like, given that they're playing a 1-16.
It's kind of crazy, but for whatever reason, the Bucs play better against the Saints in New Orleans, and the Saints actually play better against the Bucs in Tampa. So it's just kind of weird. It's worked out that way. You go back to that 38. Talk about ass kicking. The 38-3 ass kicking that Drew Brees and the Bucs put on the Saints. Put on the Buccaneers when the Saints came to town on Sunday Night Football and just drubbed them. That was with the Tom Brady team too. So. And then, of course, there was the bloodbath game that I think it was 9-0, where the Buccaneers lost Chris Godwin with the knee injury, and this was in December. Chris Godwin, this was 2021. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Leonard Fournette were all knocked out of the game by the third quarter, kind of a body bag game. The Saints just really took it to the Buccaneers, and they beat Tampa Bay with the backup quarterback. Drew Brees wasn't even playing. I think it was Taysom Hill at quarterback maybe for that game. So
I think you're right. And then, of course, going into New Orleans, the Bucs on their way to the Super Bowl victory, retiring Drew Brees in New Orleans.
In New Orleans, exactly. 30-20.
The defense coming up with some really big turnovers. I think that was also wasn't that Tyler Johnson's big sideline catch?
Yes.
Kind of the highlight of his Bucs career in that one. So it just seems that bodes well for this matchup. Then maybe we should have had it as a bigger spread.
Mike Edwards picked off Drew Brees' last pass to end a brilliant career by Brees. And when Drew Brees left, so did the NFC South championships in New Orleans. The Saints had won 4 straight. Now the tables have turned, and the Buccaneers have won 4 straight. So the balance of power has shifted. The Bucs used to be the cellar dweller in the NFC South. Now it's the Saints, and we're all thankful for that. Bucs Basement with a $4.99 super hit chat. Just win. Set yourself in good position for the division and the conference. Servassier Dennis is a liability on the field, so Kamara should eat in the pass game. There's a chance for that, and we'll talk about that individual matchup in just a few moments here. But I will say this. Pro Football Focus, they do as good of a job as they can. They fault players on certain things, and I take issues. You and I, Josh, we have banter about,
We do.
Why when there's one sack that happens, why are they giving instead of half a sack, a full sack to both players, right? He was only sacked one time. He wasn't sacked twice, but this guy got a sack and this guy got a sack. That's why PFF sacks do not match up typically with the NFL statistics.
The NFL's own accounting, yes.
But when they say Servassier Dennis gave up 438 yards in the passing game, what they're doing is they're saying Servassier Dennis, for example, he gets the blame for all 50 yards on Bijan Robinson's 50-yard catch and run touchdown to start the season in Atlanta back in week 1. It was Atlanta's first touchdown of the year. And Servassier Dennis took a bad angle and could not track him down. But there were 3 other Buccaneer players, including Tyke Smith, Antoine Winfield Jr., and Zion McCollum, that all missed tackles there. So is it fair to sit there and say Servassier Dennis is the reason why He gave up 50 yards and a touchdown on that play. What if 12 yards down the field, Zion McCollum had actually made that tackle? Or 20 yards down the field, Winfield had made that tackle, right? See my point there, Josh?
I do, and it's a very valid one. I think.
And by the way, let me preface this. I'm not sticking up for Savasi Dennis. Okay, I'm not saying he's good in coverage. I'm just trying to look at this kind of like factually and say, yeah, he has been the main culprit early on in a lot of big receptions, right? Whether it's the 37-yard to Woody Marks in week 2, the 27-yard screen to Nick Chubb. But the last time I checked, there was 11 guys on defense, like for every play, and football's supposed to be a team sport. So Servassier Dennis, definitely a liability in man coverage against running backs. And he has faced some demons so far. He has faced 2 top 10 running backs in terms of Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson that made him look bad. Todd Bowles played a lot of zone against another top 10 running back in Christian McCaffrey, and Servassier Dennis fared better. But back to my original point about Servassier, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I guess I'll tackle a few different things you mentioned there. I think that the with regards to those other players who missed the tackles, it's fair to say, does Servassier should his yards allowed be lower if those guys make those tackles? That's fair. And those players do receive demerits, and your objective categories, missed tackle rate, absolutely, that goes up. Their PFF grade, since you started kind of there, would be lower because their tackling grade goes down. Servassier Dennis has allowed more yards than any defensive back in football. And yes, you can say there have been some missed tackles that have added to his yardage total. No linebacker should have that distinction. I don't care how bad the tackling is behind you. He has allowed over 280 yards to back specifically this year. And the way that I've kind of come down on it, watching every game, Servassier Dennis gives away a drive a game. That's the best way that I can kind of describe it.
Whether it's a 30-yard catch and run by Jahmyr Gibbs that gets them into Bucs territory and they score a touchdown, a couple plays later.
I think there may be 2 games where that didn't happen, but by and large, once a game, Servassier Dennis basically hands the other team points through some type of explosive allowed. That is a giant black hole on your defense.
And it's kind of crazy because last year the middle of the defense for the linebackers was the challenging spot,
and now it's
the flats, exactly. So, and we'll see how the Buccaneers fare against a 30-year-old Alvin Kamara, who can hurt you as a receiver in years past, but only averaging about 5 yards per catch this year. Huge discrepancy from where his career average was, which is around 10 yards. So we'll see if old man Kamara can give Servassier Dennis the slip or not. And we'll talk about that matchup a little bit later just on the show here. Henry Gigante, a member for 14 months here on Pewter Report TV.
Nice.
Thank you so much. Grizzard cannot abandon the run. I was told this week that it was made very clear to Josh Grizzard, who's a smart guy, and he probably already knew this, but Todd Bowles said, hey, we can't have 2 things going on. We cannot have Baker throwing 50 passes per game, and we can't have 11 carries per game. And that's what it was, 10 for Rachaad White, 1 for Sean Tucker. The other discrepancy they can't have is 90% of the snaps going to Rachaad White, only 10% to Sean Tucker. So message sent, message received. And we are going to see more Sean Tucker in the Bayou today. And we're going to see a more stick-to-itive running game and running the ball a little bit more on early downs early in the game to get that running game going. Again, this is the Saints defense allowing an average of about 130 yards on the ground, 222 yards last week against the Saints. And I got to think that run game coordinator Kevin Carberry is going to have some things ginned up for today's game in the run game.
Yeah, I think a few things. I don't think that it's going to – the game script got away from Grizzard. And when you talk about offensive coordinators, just – for me, I tend to classify them into one of 2 silos just strategically when it comes to how they open games. And some like to poke and prod to find out what the defense wants to do in certain situations. And then others just kind of want to hammer the gas down. Liam Cohen last year was a hammer down kind of guy. I've got my best stuff and I'm going to throw it early and often, and then we'll figure it out as we go through. And he he's this rare guy where he can do that and then still make those halftime adjustments and say, you know what, based on what I've seen, I've got more hammer down stuff.
That's right.
Broussard is very much, I want to find out, what are they doing? How are they responding to this look? What do they do in these situations? And what I really appreciate about him is he has some patience when it comes to, oh, they play this way. I've got something for that, but I'm going to wait until a crucial moment to throw it. And I think that's part of the reason why he was such a good third down complement to Cohen last year. With that said, against Detroit, if you're a poke and prod guy who doesn't hammer down early, and then all of a sudden you're down 21, what was it, 21-0 or 21-3 or something like that early, now you're in a position where you have to throw the ball a bunch. I don't think that the Saints are going to punish the Bucs defense that way, where force him out of that script. And then to your point in terms of the run game, Carberry, they may have a couple of really cool changeups, but I don't think they even need them. The Saints up the middle have not fared well against double teams. And I think we're going to get into a couple of those matchups a little bit later, but just in general, inside zone and duo has been moving this defensive interior and getting offenses 4 to 7 yards on a fairly consistent basis. You throw in a couple of tosses to the perimeter just to keep the linebackers from triggering. And I think that they can have an effective run game. To your last there, Josh Williams clearing concussion protocol is so interesting to me. And I know everybody's talking about Sean Tucker and what he did to the Saints last year. And I just keep coming back to they're giving so many touches to Rashad, and he's such a good pass protector. And Tucker looked pretty good at pass protection training camp, but they still seem to not trust him in that situation. And Williams, I think, is actually a pretty good pass protector. It would not surprise me one bit if all of a sudden Josh Williams outsnaps Sean Tucker as the backup running back. Yes, they stopped giving Rashad White 90% of the snaps. But if Williams is the guy who ends up getting more of those
so it might be like 50 snaps, 50% of the snaps for Rashad White, and what you're saying is maybe 30% of the remaining snaps to Williams and 20% to Tucker. Something to keep an eye on. Meets McGee with the $5 super chat. I've watched Godwin limp off the field, but I watch him come back and play with no limping. Do you believe it could be loosening hardware in that leg? I really have no idea, and it's been interesting because he's not been put on injured reserve, but he's kind of labeled as week to week. I am concerned about this injury because I don't think the Buccaneers know exactly what's going on, to be honest. Big July.
I was just going to say, before we get to that, I did a video that we still haven't debuted because I looked at Godwin's first 2 games. And from a movement standpoint, he looked fine. He looked like he did last year. I don't think you're ever going to see the 2019 Godwin come back, but he looked just as fine as last year. I had this video all set to go, and then all of a sudden he's just out. So we've got it. We're waiting for him to come back, and I would love to release it. But that one's really interesting. I'm not a doctor, so I have no clue about the hardware thing. But I do find it interesting, like you said, that they haven't put him on injured reserve.
I know. Big July with the $4.99 super chat. First pregame live stream. How the parlay for the day. Bucs -10, White +19.5 in the first, and Tucker +24.5. Well, we'll see. We greatly appreciate the super chat, and also from David as well. Thank you for that $1.99 super chat.
Appreciate you, David.
Meets McGee with another $2 super chat. The Jets got Williamson and Johnson on the block. We'll see. I think the outcome of today's game will measure how involved Jason Light wants to be. If the Buccaneers lose this game, I don't think there's going to be any trading, because this might be a situation you're like, oh gosh, should have won this game 5-3. Injury riddled roster. This may not be the season, but if they're 6-2, Jason Light might look at this saying, okay, we're in really good position. Maybe we add some more fuel to the fire and maybe make a deal at the trade deadline if the right player is available for the right price. We shall see. Let's get into some matchups here. The Bucs matchups: Bucs offense versus Saints defense. Charlie Heck versus Cam Jordan. I'll say this: I think this is a push. I'm going to give Jordan some respect just because he's a savvy vet, and Charlie Heck gave up 9 pressures last week and a sack. But what kind of I find curious is the Saints will be splitting time between Chase Young, who's had a good 2 games back from injury, and Carl Granderson, their leading sacker with 4 sacks this year. Splitting those sacks against Tristan Wirfs almost seems like wasted reps. Why wouldn't you want to put one of those guys in rotation with Cam Jordan going up against the weak link of the offensive line, Charlie Heck? Your thoughts? I'm going to say it's a push, but what do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I'll say Charlie Heck plus a chip against Cameron Jordan. I'll give it to Heck. Cameron Jordan probably, I don't want to say probably, he's going to be a Hall of Fame player. He is far from that at this point in his career. He probably should have retired a few years ago. I just don't see it with him anymore. As long as they get a decent chip to allow Heck to really get into his set, I think that's going to be a win there. I'm with you that they don't move. They will put Granderson on the left side a few times to spell Jordan, but they don't really move Chase Young. No. And so Young versus Tristan Wirfs and keep him on that side, that's just playing into Grizzard's hands. So the Saints have done a lot of different things on defense this year versus where they were in the past. One of them is not moving Cameron Jordan, and I get it at this point in his career. If he's like, I am the left guy, I do not want to move to the right side. I do not feel comfortable on the right side. To a certain point, you defer to the franchise pillar, but at the same time, it hampers your defense quite a bit.
It does.
Doesn't allow you to get your best pass rusher against arguably the Bucs' worst offensive lineman.
I agree. Bucs running backs versus the Saints front seven. I think I kind of know which way you're going here. You were mentioning the double teams, the gap runs up the middle seem to be favoring the Buccaneers in this situation. And I think Tampa Bay, we didn't see enough running yards from Rachaad White and Sean Tucker, certainly in Detroit. They're going to come out hungry today. I think Josh Williams will get involved as well. I like the Bucs running backs versus the Saints front seven. They just have a hard time stopping the interior run game.
Yeah. I kind of mentioned it. I think that those defensive tackles are really the weak point. They've got some good linebackers who still really work well against the run game. But if the Bucs can get that vertical movement on the defensive tackles, Rachaad White and Sean Tucker can do the rest, and potentially Josh Williams. And I would give that to the Bucs there.
Sterling Shepard, who had a key fumble in that Lions game on Monday night, but overall has played pretty well at age 32. He's been healthy. He's played well. He's certainly been a great mentor for Tez Johnson and Emeka Egbuka with Mike and Chris being out against nickel cornerback Alontae Taylor, who's a really physical guy, a hard-hitting, good tackling, physical, kind of get you off your route in the first 5 yards kind of guy. I see this as a push. I like Alontae Taylor. I'm giving him some respect here. But Sterling Shepard, wouldn't be surprised if he found the end zone. He and Baker Mayfield have a connection that goes back to college, of course.
Yeah. In terms of the actual one-on-one matchup, Sterling Shepard, I think, is going to be open a lot against Alontae Taylor. A lot of it just comes down to where is he in the progression. Mm-hmm. You see all over his tape, he just gets open consistently. He's just so often the third or fourth read that he just doesn't get the ball sent to him quite enough. So from a production standpoint, I'll go with you on the push. But in terms of the one-on-one matchup, I still think that that's a advantage Sterling Shepard there.
Yeah. Graham Barton needs a bounce-back game. He got bounced all around the field by Aleem McNeil, who just honestly just dominated him. I mean, Barton gave up 6 pressures in that game against Detroit, and obviously they couldn't get the running game going. Not that Davin Godchaux is a Aleem McNeil clone. He's not. But he's a big body, 6'3", 330 pounds. He's a savvy, wily veteran up front. Not a really good player per se, but he has some size. And we even saw in training camp, Josh, Vita Vea pushing Graham Barton back a lot. And Graham Barton's a strong guy, but maybe he just doesn't have that old man strength just yet, as he's only in his second year. But this needs to be a win for Graham Barton. He needs a bounce-back game after a rough outing up there in Detroit. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt today, but wouldn't be surprised if there were some reps where he does struggle because for whatever reason, these big body, 330-plus pound nose tackles do give him some problems.
Yeah, I think it's not so much like you said, Barton's strong and he's got a good anchor. The problem happens is when he doesn't win with speed against these guys. Yeah. If they can get inside his frame, that's when he loses that anchor. Yeah. And I just think that the game is coming a little too fast for Barton right now. So Godchaux is not as quick as Aleem McNeil. So I'm going to give this to Barton as long as he doesn't lose the initial get off part of it. I think he can anchor down fine against somebody even somebody as big as Godchaux. And I think that's why you saw those losses against Vita, because Vita, for all his size, he's still so quick off the ball. Barton just has to be quicker. He has to see things a little bit faster. And I think against the Saints, who don't run as many games, he'll have that ability. And so I think you'll see a good game from him against Gottschall.
Yeah. This is going to be a fun one to watch. Tez Johnson, 2 touchdowns in 2 games. He's now a starting wide receiver with all these receiver injuries. And he'll be out there with Emeka Egbuka, Sterling Shepard. And, of course, Tez Johnson will be that other receiver in the Bucs 11 personnel, which is their favorite personnel grouping. And it's interesting because he is playing against his high school teammates. They were rivals in practice, so much so that at Pinson Valley High School, Bo Nix's father, Patrick Nix, had to separate him at times because Kool-Aid McKinstry was a wide receiver along with Tez Johnson for Bo Nix, who was the quarterback at Pinson Valley High School in Birmingham, Alabama, and they won a state championship together in 2018. But McKinstry was a two-way player, also played cornerback, and these two went at it in practice. Tez told me in the locker room they already have a jersey swap planned for after the game, but the trash talking started via text early in the week. How do you see this? Kool-Aid McKinstry's given up, I think, 3 or 4 touchdowns this year, but also the leading interceptor for New Orleans and their leading pass breakup guy. 2 picks, 5 pass breakups for McKinstry, their first-round pick from last year. But there's something about Tez Johnson. I like this kid. I think that he is sneaky good, and I'm actually going to take Tez Johnson in this matchup. I think he gets the better of Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Yeah, I think for the physical talents that we've talked about, he's so nuanced, and he understands the game so well, and he's picking up a lot of the details that are required to be successful and to have a long career in the NFL. I think he's Uncle Junior, like Unc Junior.
Yes.
I think he's picking up so much from Sterling Shepard.
There's no doubt. Yeah, that's like an uncle-nephew relationship going on right there.
Yeah, absolutely. He is the future Unc of somebody's wide receiver room. Hopefully it continues to be the Bucs. So I'm going to give it to Tez. I think I just went all the way down Bucs. Yeah. I'm taking the Bucs all the way in these matchups.
Should be. Well, we want to thank Evolve Official for becoming a Pewter Report TV channel member right here on the show. Thank you so much, Evolve. We really appreciate that. Realtor David Zussman, appreciate your $4.99 super chat. Let's say we are 6-2. Who are the front runners for edge and middle linebacker at the trade deadline? I don't know that there's going to be a trade for an edge. I just don't. The Dolphins have got 2 first-round guys in Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips who are injury prone. Bradley Chubb is on his 3rd ACL injury. He missed all of last year. Now he's playing some okay football this year, but he's getting close to 30 years old. Jalen Phillips is younger, but he's had an ACL and an Achilles in his brief Dolphins career. The problem is when you trade even a day 3 pick, a 4th-round pick means you're possibly giving up the next Bucky Irving, the next Cade Otton, the next David Walker. If you're trading a 5th-round pick, maybe that's the next Elijah Roberts, Zion McCollum, etc. So Jason Light isn't such a heater with the draft in the front office with Rob McCartney and Mike Beal and all these guys. He really values those guys. And when you're giving up a draft pick, you're also giving up a guy that could be a starter on a rookie deal that helps your salary cap for 4 years. Not saying that a trade won't happen, but it almost feels like a trade for a linebacker might be more possible than an edge. I just don't know that with Trey Hendrickson and Max Crosby off the trading market, I don't know that there's an edge out there that is going to be as impactful. I know Kayvon Thibodeau is a player I've thrown out there. I've heard no from the front office on that. So, Josh, your thoughts on this real quick before we get into the defensive matchups?
Yeah, just very quickly, as far as linebackers go, I have an article that's going to come out. I don't think we might do it today. I think it might be something for next week, looking at 4 possible linebacker that the Bucs could potentially trade for. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse there, but I think that there could be somebody that could help the team and who would be gettable for appropriate draft compensation. With the edges, I think the only one who's really a good enough to lift the room for the trade compensation that's out there would be Jalen Phillips. He's not the athlete that he used to be, but he's learned how to be a smart pass rusher. I think he would be somebody who can elevate that room, even after Hassan Reddick comes back and be a part of the rotation. Bradley Chubb, to me, is just cooked.
Yeah.
Thibodeau, I agree with you. Like, a lot of his stuff is schemed up and clean up.
Yeah.
And Jermaine Johnson, I just don't think is a culture fit, which I think obviously has to go into some of this calculus when it comes to Jason Light adding pieces.
Yep. Well said. Let's talk real quickly. We do these rapid fire, Josh, as the show's winding down. Bucs defense versus Saints offense. Elijah Roberts, you and I both like him, certainly against these guards who are not very good. Trevor Penning has given up a couple sacks and 12 pressures this year. I'm not a fan of Cesar Ruiz as well. I think Elijah Roberts gets a sack today and continues to ascend for the Bucs. I like him.
I like him, and I like the other Elijah too. I think both Elijahs have the potential to eat in this because, again, I think Elijah Simmons can win the leverage game against Trevor Penning.
Yep. Yaya Diaby versus Kelvin Banks, their first-round pick. Banks has given up the most pressures of any offensive lineman in New Orleans. Yaya Diaby seems to be putting it all together. 3 sacks in the last 2 games.
Yeah, he's eating up. I think Elijah eats in this one. Yaya eats in this one. He continues to ascend. He's putting it all together, like you said. The sacks are now coming. He's still towards the top of the NFL. He's 22nd in pressures this year per Pro Football Focus. So I think that continues to happen against the Saints and specifically against Banks.
I agree. Servassier Dennis, I love him in the box as a tackler going forward. In reverse, it's a little scary. Versus Alvin Kamara. If Kamara was younger and more in his prime, I would say this is Alvin Kamara. I do think that a 30-year-old Kamara, we're not seeing the burst anymore. I think the carries, the snaps have taken their toll. The age is catching up to him. Not to say that he can't be deadly or score a touchdown or hurt the Bucs today, but he's not a world-class athlete like a Jahmyr Gibbs, a Bijan Robinson that's just going to absolutely cook and pull away from Servassier Dennis. So I'm going to say this is a push. I think Dennis had a pretty good game in zone coverage versus Christian McCaffrey. I think the Bucs might kind of tackle the Saints with the same similar scheme and keep Kamara in check in the screen game and the swing pass game. I like this as a push. I
will echo almost everything you said, Scott. The Bucs pass defense struggled against the 49ers only because that was a terrible field surface and a lot of guys were falling down for the most part. Yeah. But their game plan against Christian McCaffrey was good. Just continually have bodies around him, including Servassier Dennis. If that is the plan on a indoor surface where they won't have to worry about falling down, I think that you go zone heavy and you win against Kamara. If the Bucs go man heavy, then I would give this to Kamara. So I guess a caveat there based on game plan.
Zion McCollum, who knocked out Chris Olave to allow Antoine Winfield Jr. to scoop and score. McCollum fares pretty well against fast wide receivers. It's the big physical receivers that he struggles with. And if you go back and look at he basically erased Xavier Worthy in Kansas City on Monday night. I think this is a matchup that favors McCollum. At the same time, Olave is a prideful guy. He's going to want to make up and atone for last year when McCollum knocked him out. But I think Zion McCollum, 2 weeks removed from that thumb injury, he had an interception last year in New Orleans. I like this matchup for Zion. I think he has a pick today and helps Tampa Bay secondary keep the lid on Chris Olave from going downfield.
I'm not going to go as far as to say a pick with that big club on his hand, but I do think that McCollum wins this matchup because of his physicality against Olave. So, 100% on that one.
I like Tyke Smith versus everybody.
That's literally what I was about to say.
Because Tyke Smith is a dog, and I don't mean just a bulldog.
God, he's so good.
He is so fun to watch. I mean, honestly, he's been the better safety this year. Not taking anything away from Antoine Winfield Jr., but Tyke Smith can do it all. Tackle for loss. He already has 2 sacks on the season. He's going to be in the matchup against Juwan Jennings. Whenever that happens, I like him to erase Jennings from the picture in coverage. But Johnson might have a chance to eat against some of the linebackers. But I like Tyke Smith versus everybody.
Yeah, that's literally what I was going to say. You took the words out of my mouth.
We've had a blast. Time has flown because this is so much fun doing the show with you, Josh. Just wanted to remind everybody we've got some great content coming up at 4:05. Of course, Pewter Game Day. Matt Matera and Daniel Morales right here at Pewter Report TV, our YouTube channel. Make sure you tune into that. And remember that there's a bye week, so there's no game next week. So enjoy your football-free bye week, Bucs fans. But we'll be back in 2 weeks with the next Pewter pregame show before the Patriots game. That'll be fun. But we're not done talking Buccaneers after the game. Oh, no. We've got the Bucs and Saints postgame podcast where Matt and I will be breaking down all of the action, hopefully about a Tampa Bay Buccaneer win that will get them to 6-2 and get them into the bye week feeling good. Josh, this has been fun, man. Any last parting shots for the viewers here?
Yeah, I'll give one more, a bonus matchup, if you will. The Saints have a really good safety rookie named Jonas Sanker out of Virginia, if I remember correctly. He was somebody
liked him in the draft.
You and I both really liked, and he is playing really well for them. But he's not a complete player, which is why he wasn't a day one, or I don't even think he was a day 2 pick. I think the Saints got him in day 3. He plays really well half safety and in the box. But because the Saints like to go cover 1 and cover 3, based on how the offensive leverage is in terms of they end up with Sanker on the post sometimes. And that is where he can be exposed. So my hope is that the Bucs use early down play action where they rotate the safeties where Sanker is the high man and they can hit an explosive with Emeka Egbuka running a post across Sanker's face. I'm going to have something on an article later that's coming out shortly after this podcast. You'll see a clip of the Patriots doing exactly that earlier this year. And I think that the Bucs have an opportunity to put something like that together against him.
That sounds great. That sounds like a game plan. I'm going to text Todd Bowles right now and say, hey, we need to get Josh and you on the same page and get Josh Grizzard to dial up these plays as Josh Capo called for. So I'm with you on that. Greatly appreciate everybody for tuning in to the Pewter pregame show today. For Josh Capo, I'm Scott Reynolds. We'll see you in 2 weeks for the next Pewter pregame show. Out.